even though I had so many issues in my mind and I couldn't fit it all together, I was planning on being a missionary with that interdenominational group. Uh, and um, that was, I'll say that was in like 2022 or so. I graduated high school that year. Um, and I read one of my friends who was a missionary from that organization gave me a book called Mission to the Headhunters. I think it was missionary efforts in South America. And there were lots of like great stories of people helping these indigenous communities by bringing them medicine and stuff, but there was something off. And, I was maybe 15, 16, 17, somewhere around there. So I was, really learning about colonialism and a lot of the terrible efforts and secondhand experiences from people I talked to about the issues of evangelical cross-cultural missionary works. And I was like, is this something that I really want to participate in? And it wasn't too long after that I took an Alaska history course and learned about Father Veniaminov. I don't think I'm saying that right. Wasn't for quite a while that I learned that was Saint Innocent, the Bishop of all Alaska. Our
So you're
cathedral is
learning
named
about
after him.
Saint Innocent from a college course in university?
It was actually, this was my senior year of high school.
High school. Oh, wow.
And it was during this time where I was grappling with like, is it ethical for me to do this, to be this mission? What am I actually providing for people? What am I bringing to them? Is this good news? We call this good news, but it really to me was like a problem that God created that then solved within himself that you then have to have an emotional reaction to in order to like have any value with. It was all about that emotional, ecstatic experience of God.
So in that ethos, it's like you can't know God or you can't have a relationship with him unless you have this experience. And so they would try to elicit this experience in whoever they're missionizing to.
And the sort of the camp that I was a part of, which I did live at and was a counselor for when I was like 19, was very much more conservative. We didn't do any sort of, you're not expected to feel God in your body sort of thing. But it was very neo-Calvinistic, 5-point Calvinistic. And when I was like 15 years old, there was something about the virtue of humility that I actually became convinced that that's what Scripture teached. I know that sounds insane to an Orthodox Christian, but to me, the sort of archetype of the humble person was something that I deep down really wished was what the Bible taught, but I genuinely didn't believe that. And as a kid, I was very into like Star Wars. I said it earlier, like Avatar, The Last Airbender, all these sorts of things where the archetypal saint, if you will, the holy person is always someone who's just deeply humble. And it's not that complicated. Like they have their strength through their humility, like Qui-Gon Jinn or Uncle Iroh or something like that. And I was very influenced by that and yearned for it in the faith, but it wasn't really there for me. And I became stuck on this idea of humility and what it means really to be radically humble and not to just sort of have it as a label of like, I don't know, mild expectation or something like that. And so because of that, I kind of became a neo-Calvinist on accident. I was like thinking to myself as a kid or as like a 15-year-old, whatever, that like, oh yeah, if I am saved by grace and there's no merit that I offer to that, and Christ says not to, or Ephesians, we don't boast. So like I sort of pieced it together and thought, okay, I'm going to force myself into humility by dogma, basically, is what I did. And then I learned about the 5 points of Calvinism, as it were, and I was like, okay, that lines up. So I became a Calvinist, not a historic Calvinist, but someone who believed that we have no free will and that we are saved, elected by Christ, or I guess by God the Father, as I would have put it, for salvation. And it was like, at that moment, I think this would have been like 2019, 16 years old, something like that. That's really when I started to seek the true faith, I think, because I couldn't get rid of this idea of humility and what that could actually mean. And I don't want to, not saying that no one in my world was humble or anything like that, not at all. In fact, I really like John Piper, for example, because within that sort of circle, he had very humble qualities to his rhetoric and his personality that I looked up to. But I wanted something more extreme. I think, what does radical humility look like? And I think radical humility looks like seeing another culture and actually lowering yourself to it. And that's what I saw in Father Viniaminov, again, probably not saying it right. His immense efforts to kind of, in some ways, protect the indigenous culture from the Russian fur trade company, which was persecuting the indigenous people, taking their wives, taking their animals, forcing them to hunt for them, all these sorts of things. And his efforts to preserve their culture, as is tradition of the Orthodox faith, create a written language for them, so that their language not only could be read in services, but just be preserved for its own sake. That deeply resonated with me, and I never forgot about it.